and then give you the host back, and then you can share. Okay, great. So we're joined here today by our friends from Slalom, Dylan and Sophia, who are going to teach us about design for all. Thank you so much for sponsoring our Zettabytes Lunch and Learn. We're going to go ahead and let you get started. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. You can see our screen still, right? Can you see our screens? Okay, cool. Perfect. So Dylan and I are going to be presenting on Design for All. For those who don't know me or may know me, I'm Sophia. My pronouns are she, her. I've been with Slalom for about a year, just over a year and a half. I am on the recruiting team. I recruit across Slalom, whether it's our tech people, our business people, kind of play across the board. And I also help start our PRISM, which is our LGBTQIA+ ERG here at Slalom about a year ago. I co-lead it with Dylan. So I've had an awesome time doing that and providing educational events for our team here, and it's been awesome so far. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, and I'm Dylan. I am a consultant with Slalom. I've been working here for a little over a year and a half now. I have a master's in user experience design, and I've been helping clients over the last 2 years really understand what solutions we can provide to their digital web experience needs. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. We're going to start off by introducing us and Slalom and what we do.
Yeah, so Slalom. So we sit here locally in Columbus, but we are a global organization. We do actually have offices in over 40 markets here in the US, as well as the UK, Australia, Japan, Canada. Recently opened our Germany office last year. So again, lots of offices, but we kind of sit here at the local level. More about Slalom Columbus. We focus on a lot of different things, whether it's strategy, technology, or business transformation. When we work with our clients, we are trying to figure out what their needs are, what problems we can help them solve, and then provide end-to-end solutions that drive meaningful impact. Just a little bit more about our vision and our purpose. I really do think this drives our business and what we do here. So our vision, we want to create a world in which each person has the opportunity to love their work and their life. We're doing really awesome work here, building some of the coolest solutions, doing some of the greatest transformations, that sort of thing. Again, if you're not happy in the work that you're doing, it's really hard to be happy in life, and vice versa. Again, definitely people first organization. And then our purpose, our why, we really want to help people and organizations dream bigger, move faster, and build better tomorrows for all. So we do a lot of different things here. Like I mentioned earlier, some strategy, business transformation, technology. But what we do, we start talking with our clients, stakeholders, understanding their industries and figuring out how we can work with them and partner with them to achieve the outcomes that they need and what they want. We do take a true partnership approach when we work with our clients. We realize that each client is unique in their needs, right? So taking that approach. We have several partnerships with some of the top organizations. These are our big ones: AWS, Google, Microsoft. Definitely on the data side, some Snowflake, Tableau. Again, going back to that partnership piece, again, we're going to do and work with the technologies and tools that work best for our clients. Again, we also work with a wide range of industries. We don't just focus on one. Our consultants here during their time at Slalom, can work with a healthcare company or manufacturing or whatnot. So again, we work with a lot of different industries. Again, we don't solely focus on one.
Yeah, so I'll take it back over. Driving kind of what we do and who we are, we really don't start any opportunity or project without first addressing what the problem is, right? And in this case, when we were first approached by Zettabytes, or Zetabytes Today rather, they were asking if we would host a lunch and learn to discuss how can we better design for inclusivity. When we look at design, or when I look at design personally, within the context of digital experience, we first wanted to address our target or our market, and within the context of this main problem or opportunity, right? So roughly there are around 311 million internet users across the US, and then over 5 billion users around the world. And what does this mean for us, right? This is a huge market, and how do we design appropriately for all? How do we bring that inclusive direction and perspective to the table to provide solutions that don't just work for one niche target audience, but work for everyone in the masses? We wanted to then expand on that a little bit and really dive deeper into what problems are addressing this inclusive market, right? 90% of websites are inaccessible today to users with disabilities and are subject to potential ramifications. What that means is that 90% of websites are not clearly driving experiences that work for users who may not be able to accurately or effectively experience their product. So if they have any disability, a lot of brands didn't take accessibility into account and are therefore providing a product that may not be the best solution for everyone. Second piece here that we found really interesting was that every dollar that's being invested into UX and UI, typically design returns around $100. So this is equal to a return of 9,000%. The reason why we chose to include this was because if 90% of websites are inaccessible, then this design return then becomes a design loss, right? Because you are effectively forced to redesign this experience, whether that be from a UI and or a UX driven perspective. And then finally, 52% of users say that the main reason why they won't return to a website is based on aesthetics. When we hear aesthetics, and when I say we, I really mean like UX and UI designers, even other disciplines within this industry, we tend to think that it's visual, right? So graphic design, what colors are we using, what brand assets are we using to keep users engaged? But I think for the purposes of designing for all and the purposes of this presentation, aesthetics could be even larger than that, right? It could really go into those who have disabilities, and the way that they're perceiving the aesthetics or the way that they're perceiving your brand is much different than maybe other users without those disabilities. So trying to design experiences that engage users and excite users, not just one specific target market, but how do we design for all, is something that we are really passionate at Slalom. So we wanted to discuss, sorry guys, hold on one second. We wanted to discuss the impact of compliance, right? Really kind of in case there was any confusion around what we mean when we talk about designing for those with disabilities. So we've categorized it into 4 main categories, and they are listed in hearing, vision, physical, and cognitive impairments. You can obviously see that this market, especially when it's categorized and organized such as this, that this is a large group of people that we need to be aware of. And when we say design for all, collectively, this is well over 2 billion people that are not being accurately designed for. And that's 2 billion potential users that could really steer the course and direction of how your business is doing. And so we wanted to hit on one main piece of this compliance, right? And focus on color blindness so that we could give you a really good understanding for just how something as small as color can actually make a really big impact to how users are experiencing your brand. We would want you guys to, so we have a few slides to follow this, and we'd like you guys to focus on these color pencils along the right-hand side to see how color really does make a difference, and to see also how those with vision impairments or colorblind deficiencies perceive these colors, right? So to the naked eye, for someone who is labeled as with unobstructed vision, the industry usually classifies that as normal or perfect vision. But for the sake of this conversation, and even recommended for the sake of conversations that you may have with your team members as this follows, we wanted to be more inclusive in the way that we label those with disabilities. So we've actually we've changed the name of normal or perfect to unobstructed. Telling someone that they have normal or perfect vision often implies that users in other categories are abnormal or flawed. So unobstructed helps to identify these categories of users in a way that's less offensive and sensitive to the impairments that they may have. So again, as we continue to go through this presentation, just focus on these colors along the right-hand side. So you'll see that as we move into I always trip on this one, so give me some grace here, but deuteranomalia is the most common form of color blindness. And if you were looking at the color pencils along the right-hand side, you see that they see a more subdued color palette, especially when it comes to colors like green and red. Roughly 198 million people experience this type of color vision deficiency. So paying close attention to how you can bring in other elements so that they understand that a piece of your web experience has still offering an engaging site to them, as well as those in the unobstructed vision category, is really critical to being successful. The next form of color deficiency is protanopia. More than 30 million people around the world are diagnosed with this deficiency. And when someone has protanopia, all shades of green and red look rather faded, whereas yellow and blue shades seem largely unaffected. So what does this mean for your sight experience, right? The most common colors that we usually represent success or failure are green and red, right? So how can we establish more elements of understanding for those who maybe have a harder time discerning between these colors? And maybe that's done through animations or typography. Messaging and content can be huge, letting the user know that they successfully passed a certain stage or failed this certain stage can be really critical in how your site is performing. Tritanopia, roughly 8,000 people are affected, not as large of a color deficiency, but they see colors with a greenish and pink tone. It's sort of a sporadic form of color blindness and is believed to affect a really low percentage of men and women. And then finally, we have total color blindness or monochromacy. It's the rarest form of color vision deficiency, affecting roughly 2,400 people around the world, but people who have it can only see in black and white, which clearly can mean that this is going to be one of the hardest color blind categories to really design for. But again, using typography and messaging, animation can really help to offset this deficiency. The larger message here is obviously that people are users, right? And with that being said, 237 million people are affected by some form of color blindness. That's just color blindness within that vision impairment category, right? That number can obviously increase due to what impairment the user may have. So that's potentially 237 million users who are visiting your site or the web and not getting the same quality experience as someone without any vision impairment. So if we take this message and we sort of expand on it and dive a little bit deeper into it, we start to understand that impairments play a large role in how users are perceiving your brand and the products or services that you're offering to them. So designing appropriately can really be that shift or that pivot in, am I selling this product or service effectively or am I not? So there's a lot of high level insights to throw your way, right? We wanted to kind of reset the brain a little bit before we move on to the next section and give you guys 5 seconds to kind of digest all that information that we had just thrown at you. So we're going to take this little bit of time before we move on to kind of reorient ourselves. So one major question coming out of a lot of this information that we presented was trying to ask yourself, is my brand delivering a digital experience that doesn't align to accessibility standards? A few key pieces of information that can really affect that is understanding that ADA does not apply to all organizations. Private clubs and religious organizations are exempt, but it's highly recommended that you still design for accessibility, because although users may be a part of those private clubs and religious organizations, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are exempt from any disability, right? But just being cognizant and aware that your user base is not one niche persona, but it's a collection of multiple different personas. And as we saw earlier, 90% of websites are not currently appropriately designing for these personas. So how can we better orient ourselves in the beginning of the product design process to design appropriately? Websites for or funded by state or local governments, and then websites for businesses are the mandatory sites that should be aligning to these ADA standards. So if you fall within one of those categories, it may be time to take a look at your site through the lens of someone who may not be able to experience it as effectively as someone without a disability. So let's say, these brands or sites are not designing appropriately for accessibility, right? Over 11,000 cases just in 2021 were brought to the DOJ and actually successfully sued because they were not designing appropriately. And when I say sued, anywhere from the civil or subsequent penalties could cost over $100,000 to $200,000. And this is just for each site experience, right? So if your homepage isn't offering an effective or compliant design, that's $100,000. If your add to cart page isn't doing it effectively, and so on and so forth. So just making sure that every milestone within the user journey is appropriately designed so that you're not being penalized in the future. And even more importantly, your users are engaging with your brand as effectively as possible. So now that we've kind of touched on, is my brand effectively designing according to ADA standards? If not, what are the penalties? And once we sort of recognize those penalties, how do I ensure that my digital experience is aligning? We wanted to, before we kind of presented our solution to that need or that challenge, we wanted to first start by asking some how might we statements to kind of get the ball rolling, right? And this is how Slalom would approach a project with even our own internal teams or our external stakeholders or clients. So the first one that we have here is how might we create a system that ensures that your brand is being represented in a consistent, visually pleasing, and compliant manner. We're asking this question because we want to make sure that your brand is coming across as consistently and effectively as possible. But we're still, because we noticed that 52% were leaving sites because of aesthetics, we want to make sure that it's still an engaging and exciting visual design that also talks and speaks to and solves the needs that are presented by those with any disabilities. Secondly, we wanted to ask how might we provide a standardized kit of assets to ensure that this return on your investment is baked within your current process. So what does that mean, right? Once we create this system, how can we ensure that this system becomes a standard for your internal organization so that the return on that investment and the longevity of that standardized process is baked in from the onset of creating new products or from the onset of enhancing current ones. And then finally, how might we deliver solutions to a currently untapped market before your competitors beat you to it? I think the larger message here is that that to reiterate that 90% of sites are not accurately designing for those with disabilities. And what that means to us is that there's a huge opportunity here for you to not only just design appropriately for those with disabilities, but to also market your products and services more effectively to those with disabilities. You know, a consumer or a user may be hopping onto your site looking for a product or service, and may not even know that you offer it because they are not able to see, hear, or really physically move through your site appropriately. So how can we just better that experience and better that engagement to those who have a harder time experiencing your brand? So now that we've sort of gone through the problem, we've sort of addressed the needs, and we sort of addressed those moments of opportunity, we sort of tailor a solution for every one of our clients. And in this case, it tends to actually be a more powerful solution because it's going to help enable a thriving future for your brand as you start to institute it. And so what is that system? So we're introducing a design system, right? This design system is truly impacting all, not just those who are designing or developing the final product, but also the users who are effectively experiencing that product, right? So this is an approach to efficiently and effectively scaling the creation of accessibly and engaging compliant products. This approach actually works to standardize the products your organization is pushing to market, cultivating an even better branded experience more consistently and quicker than maybe you have before. So in my line of work, we sort of categorize different components as we start the design process, and this helps to really orient our way of thinking and orient how we are actually transitioning the design off to development. So we start with what's called atoms, and this can be anywhere from, if you've seen like a brand guidelines document, for example, this can help to highlight typography or color systems, font choices, the more minute pieces of the therefore larger parts to follow, right? So if we use a form design as an example here, if you see any of the font choices or colors that are used to inherently navigate your way through first name, last name, email address, and phone number, there's different colors and font weights that we use to establish that hierarchy and therefore get the user's attention as soon as possible. If these atoms are not appropriately, do not follow a foundation that is compliant to accessibility standards, those with vision impairments may actually come to your form and not digest it appropriately, therefore, potentially typing in the wrong information in the fields. So molecules, this is where those pieces sort of kind of come together. So you'll notice that a molecule might be, in the context of a form design, the input field, right? This is where you would type in your first name or last name or contact info. The organisms are how all of those input fields sort of stack on top together and work together. So you'll notice that oftentimes they kind of live right on top of each other, right? So it's first name, last name, email, and phone number. So that's just the collection of those different input fields as one cohesive unit. And then those transition into templates. So these are kind of like a best practices or a usage guide for, how do I implement a form into my design, right? How is this going to work best and work most appropriately for those with disabilities? And then finally, pages, those are the final product designs that we would then pass off to development. So now that we kind of understand those key components of UI, we're going to go into how those key components work within the design system itself. A design system is not a sticker sheet, it's not a UI kit or component or pattern library or style guide. It's the collection of all of these things, right? And I think the biggest piece here that I'm trying to evoke and the biggest message that I'm trying to relate to you is that it's not just helping design, but it's helping design and development and your product team as a whole. So design libraries, storybooks, and code repositories work together in what's called a unified design system to therefore bridge out into a unique and comprehensive subset of guidelines, pattern libraries, and tools and resources. These guidelines really help to relay the message for when to use some of these pieces that go into the design system, how to effectively evoke your brand identity, not just in the way that maybe you thought initially, but how does your brand identity come through in the case of accessibility, so that it can be seen, heard, and digested appropriately. While also moving into usage guidelines, functional and technical documentation, and then relaying out how best to integrate or implement this design system into your current product design process. So really just taking this key piece of onboarding and training that I think is lost throughout the design and development process pretty often, and establishing that so that everyone can come to the table having the same foundation of knowledge for how and when to use this design system. So we kind of touched on, design and development being two main roles or disciplines within your organization that are affected or impacted by the design system itself. But there's some other disciplines that could be benefited as well. So it's bridging out beyond design and UX and into product management, brand and marketing, and communications can be a huge piece to this. Development and IT, QE, QA, and then any vendor partners or third parties that may also be sponsoring this site or being showcased or highlighted through this site. Trying to expand how best to highlight your brand on a website. But if you do have partners and third parties that are sponsored through this site design, how can they evoke their brand in a accessibly compliant way also? So this isn't just a recommendation that we're giving to this small group today, right? This is something that larger organizations are already establishing and implementing into their current processes so that their products that they're pushing to external or internal facing audiences are done so in a way that are visually consistent and compliant to the audience itself. Brands like Salesforce, Shopify, Apple, Google are all baking in and investing in a design system so that it's decreased time and money down the road for these experiences that they're pushing to market. So when I first started working with clients, I started kind of hearing messages or key pieces of information that helped me understand, okay, they are in need of a design system, right? Some of these statements could include my experiences look inconsistent, my project teams seem to work in silos or independently. We deliver low quality products. That may be something that's an output from a retro, right? Or just a statement that they have as a need when we first come on board to help build out or elevate an experience that they currently have. There's no standardization of our brand across the products that we're pushing to market. And we need really just like a destination or a foundation of knowledge so that we can ensure that these best practices are stuck in the right people's heads, so that there aren't single points of failure throughout the design and development journey. And then we wanted to kind of highlight some value data that we've actually found throughout working with several different clients throughout the world. Roughly $200,000 could be saved per project, and that has to do with how many man hours are being worked to develop and design these final products for your users, right? And then that equates to over 13 million saved in about only 2 years. So 50% of a reduction in revision time, 18% quality improvement, 10 to 20 times faster page build, which can obviously save money as you are creating these experiences. 31% fewer person hours, 2 to 3 times faster time to market, and then a 34% faster time to design. I think one piece of information that's maybe left out of this data is, 100% attention devoted to those who have a disability. I think that as we continue to grow our understanding for the value that a design system can bring to not only just your current target and markets, audiences, it's an even bigger value or even more impact to those who are often overlooked. And I think that as we continue to express the message of designing for everyone and designing for all, a design system is really inclusive in nature. Another added benefit that we've actually found is the importance of parity through a design system. This enables your product teams to close that gap, whether that be communication or understanding as you go through the QE and QA process, or even just moving from design to development as they communicate throughout the process of an agile methodology, right? As we continue to iterate some of the concepts and solutions that we've worked to provide to our clients, this will make it easier and quicker to iterate these solutions so that we can ensure that it is being created for all and not just their target market. And then finally, we wanted to express that accessibility piece is baked into this design system. As we touched on throughout this presentation, accessible design or designing for accessibility is such a critical piece to how Slalom approaches any engagement, but more so it's a message and an encouragement to you all that accessibility is a piece that's baked into your own minds as you go through the design and development process. So when we start by developing and designing these atoms, molecules, and organisms, we start with the understanding of color, typography, spacing, and understanding that even when I'm creating something as small as a popover or a button, that the colors, the typography that we're using, even the drop shadow and where this button may sit is done strategically so that those with any kind of disability or impairment will have a successful and engaging experience. So as we did before, again, lots of stuff that we just touched on here. We wanted to just give your mind a little bit of a break before we move on to our final section for how we've done it in the past. So we're just going to take 5 seconds for you to just decompress, right? Understand that you are designing for accessibility as we continue this presentation. So we wanted to really highlight a project for how we've done or implemented a design system in the past. And this client project was with Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm sure, I think, I'm presuming that all of you know who this is, but really it's just a restaurant that's providing more of like a really physical experience thus far. But what they wanted to do was take their 4 existing digital experiences and sort of combine them into a visually consistent manner. So how do we increase loyalty and drive more e-commerce transactions? But while also improving the customer experience overall, right? And this customer is not just, maybe a manic football fan who wants to drink all day, but it could be someone who just wants to get a quick bite to eat. This is not someone who is one persona, but just, again, reiterating that message that we are trying to design for everyone. And in that case, our solution was that we established a team equipped with design, UX, software development, and project management members so that we could inherently approach the solution with a unified perspective and vision and not coming to the table in silos. Because we at Slalom always work collaboratively, so we just want to ensure that the solutions that we're providing are from one cohesive foundation. So the output, right? The output of this design system was created with all assets needed to provide both designers and developers with a comprehensive understanding for how best to update current products, but also how best to provide an inclusive, fresh, and brand right future product, right? The design system is not only made to elevate the way that you create products in the future, right? This is supposed to help you save time and money as you iterate your current products, just bringing them up to speed and bringing them up to ADA compliance, so that the current products that you have spent so much time and money creating are not lost, but furthermore enhanced to speak to these audiences. And then this implementation facet obviously goes to show that how this design system was implemented from not just the mobile perspective, but also from the tablet and desktop perspectives. These experiences this brand is experienced across different platforms and across different devices. So ensuring that all devices and all experiences are compliant to every user was a really, really big component to this project. So to recap, right? Great design is more than just making things pretty. I often hear in my line of work, just go and design it so that it looks pretty for us. We just want our brand to look really good. Well, that is the UI side of everything, but the UX is the strategy, and the UX is actually what's inherently making us create products that can be experienced by all and by everyone. Just reiterating that message that inclusivity is not just designing for those of different races, genders, sexual orientations, but also for those with disabilities, because that demographic can be pretty heavy within any type of way that we categorize the word all, right? So we just encourage you to just go to the table and look at your current and future products and think, is this something that aligns to everyone? So I'll stop there. That was our little how we inclusively design message for today. I wanted to ask if there were any questions. I see the chat is somewhat blowing up, so I'm going to stop sharing for right now and take a look at some of these questions that we have. You guys can also jump off mute if you want and ask us questions too, and we'll try to answer to the best of our ability.
Was the Buffalo Wild Wings choice made because you knew you were presenting a lunch and learn?
Vinny, you're amazing. It wasn't, but I'm just going to steal that and say yes, it was.
Awesome. It was great for my user experience.
Yes, good. Oh, that's what I aim to hear in every engagement. Okay, well, we will try to send out a copy of this presentation, maybe just because we know that some audience members maybe didn't have the opportunity to join. But we really, really appreciate everyone getting on board today, and hopefully it makes a difference to your current experiences. And we're always here to help if you ever have any questions.
This was awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I'm not in the user experience space too much, but this is really helpful just to think about how to build and structure products. So well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having us. We really appreciate it.